Story time about how I got caught hooking up with my stepson. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My husband actually cheated on his wife with me. I started working at his company when I was 18. We started an affair and I knew it was wrong, but at the time I was very broke. He offered me a wealthy lifestyle and believe it or not, we fell in love. So when he and I got married, I was still 18. He was much older than me, he was 42. Everyone in town, of course, started hating me because I broke up the family. His wife couldn't even see my face. My husband already had 2 kids when we got married. One was 12, one was 15. So they were much closer in age to me than he was. The kids and I got along super well. I was their cool stepmom and we had a lot of fun. When I turned 20, the oldest boy came to live with us. And I think you already know what happens. My husband was always traveling for work. That means my stepson and I would be home alone most of the time. One night we decided to watch a movie, and before I knew it, we were making out on the couch. From then, we basically started an affair behind my husband's back. Part 2 is up. Part 2 about how I got caught hooking up with my stepson. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said, my husband was always traveling for work. So my stepson and I would be alone in the house a lot. One night we were watching a movie and it just happened. After that, we couldn't get enough of each other. He even started skipping class so that he could spend more time with me. We basically turned into boyfriend and girlfriend when my husband wasn't there. When my husband would come home from his work trips, we would pretend like everything was normal. One day after my husband got back from one of his work trips, he found one of his son's socks in our bed. He asked me how it got there, but I told him it probably got stuck in there while I was washing the sheets. A few months passed by and my stepson and I are still hooking up. This is when I realized that I hadn't gotten my period in a few months. My period was always irregular, so I didn't think anything of it. My stepson went to the pharmacy to get me a pregnancy test. It came out positive, but the big problem is that my husband can't have children anymore. How was I going to explain this to my husband when he couldn't have kids? Part 3 is up. Part 3 about how I got caught hooking up with my stepson. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My stepson and I took the pregnancy test and it turns out it was positive. Well, I told my stepson that his dad wasn't able to have kids anymore. That's when he really flipped out. Then he tells me we should just tell his dad the truth. I told him let's not do anything until we actually confirm that I'm pregnant. We go to the doctor the next day and it turns out I'm not pregnant. But this made me realize that we needed to end the affair. Once we got home, I told him we needed to break things off. He begged me not to, and we went to his bedroom. Not even 2 minutes later, his mother walks in. She catches us on his bed. She nearly has a heart attack, calls his dad, and tells him everything. She took him out of the house and told me never to see him again. When my husband came back from his trip, he made me promise not to see my stepson again. I told him we should get a divorce, but he said no. Then he confessed to me that he's been having an affair too. Now he doesn't even let me leave the house anymore. I want a divorce. What should I do? Story time about how my boyfriend broke up with me to marry my mother. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. Yes, my boyfriend actually did marry my mom. A little backstory on him. He and I had been dating for 6 months. We decided we wanted to move in together, but neither of us had a job. So we ended up moving in with my mother. A little backstory on my mom. Her and I never got along when I was growing up. I mean, it would get to the point where we would throw hands. Every single week she had a new boyfriend. Most of the time her boyfriends would come live with us and she would pay for everything. She even asked me to get a job so that I could help support her and her boyfriend. I started working at a restaurant. And yeah, I helped her pay for bills. I would even buy her boyfriend his beer. When I got accepted into college, I decided I would move out. After that, I barely spoke to my mom. Fast forward to when my boyfriend and I move in with her. She would wear lingerie around the house and constantly flirt with my boyfriend. I had to tell her on several occasions to cover up and just leave him alone. But here's the thing, it never bothered my boyfriend. In fact, he would flirt back. I thought he was just joking. Until a few months passed and he breaks up with me. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my boyfriend broke up with me to marry my mother. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So like I said in part 1, we moved into my mom's house and she was wearing lingerie all the time. And she would constantly flirt with my boyfriend. My boyfriend was having a really hard time finding a job, but luckily I found a job. So I started working as a personal assistant. The problem is that as a personal assistant, you have to be on call almost 24/7. So I was usually never home, and sometimes when I would get home, I'd have to go right back out. This allowed for my mom and my boyfriend to spend a lot of time together by themselves. I would come home and they would be watching movies on the couch together. My mom would always cook him dinner. And then I started finding out stuff. For example, I found out they went to the movies together and they didn't invite me. I only found out because my boyfriend used our joint bank account to pay for the tickets. Sometimes they would order food for themselves and not even offer me any. And they would have beach days. They were spending way too much time together. At first I thought this was good because it meant they got along. But the more my mom dressed provocatively, the more I realized she was trying to seduce him. Then my boyfriend breaks up with me and tells me that I should move out because him and my mom fell in love. Part 3 of how my boyfriend broke up with me to marry my mother. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So one day my boyfriend breaks up with me and tells me that I should move out. And when I asked him why, he said that him and my mother fell in love. But since I was already suspecting something, it didn't really surprise me. But of course I was still devastated. That's when he asked me if I could move out that same night. Mind you, I don't have any money or even a place to go to. That's when I run over to my mom's room and guess what? She had locked herself inside. The coward didn't even want to face her own daughter. She told me that the best thing for everyone was for me to move out and that she knew I could get back up on my feet. So I grabbed some of my stuff and I went over to my best friend's house. My best friend invited me to live with her, thank God. A few weeks later, my mom invites me to her wedding with my boyfriend. Or ex, I should say. Last I heard, she's doing OnlyFans, and my ex is living off of her. I have a better job, I'm thriving, and have my own apartment.